We're talking about home sales and prices dropping. Alderman, we manage real estate. I'm in a company that manages, at least accounts for the real estate.
Just want to make sure that we understand that the we is not me. He has a mouse in his pocket.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a business that does that, and it's like so we keep track of rents and we keep track of the property, what's going on there for them, and I get lots and lots of assessments. And over the last 4 or 5 years, I finally got a couple drops in the assessment, like 1 or 2%. According to this report in the Journal-Times, we're back to the Journal-Times here, the city of Racine has seen a 51.5% drop in assessed values in home sales. What's the excuse? What's the explanation? And you're facing, I don't know if we're going to bring this up now, you can address it as you wish, we are facing several $100,000 in lawsuits by some of these big companies. I think it was Regency, Target, Sears, Elmer Plaza, Regency Mall. They all went to court saying we're way overassessed. Now, if they win that suit that they're overassessed, guess what? They're going to get a lot of money back from the city.
Well, let's consider that first off, they've already lost the first round.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We knew we were going to lose those two.
They
rounds.
Not only lost at the city level, but they lost at the level above us.
That was a given. Now they're going up to the Supreme Court. Now you're going to get away from all the politics going on around the city. They're obviously going to lose at City Hall. That's a city assessor that you can go talk to. You're going to lose that one. That's
well, keep in mind that there is a board there's a citizen board of appeals that this went to. So this went to citizens who decided that the assessment was fair, not people being paid by the city. So you had somebody paid by the city who assessed it.
Yeah, and
they made a
points those
determination.
people?
Well, they get appointed by mayors,
That's right.
not all by this mayor.
Yeah, we know the game.
That's fine.
I've been there, done that. Then the next thing is going to be to some circuit court judges that live right in town here, and they're not about to say, "Oh, hey, guess what? You're right. Racine, cough up $200,000-$300,000. They know the budget stuff too. The point is,
well, but
we're getting closer to Madison now.
Before we impugn the integrity of the circuit court judges, okay, let's point out that I believe that if a circuit court judge felt that they couldn't make a fair and impartial decision, that they would recuse themselves, as they have in numerous situations where the city's been involved. So I'm not prepared to say that they don't have a good. That they didn't make an intelligent, reasoned finding.
Well, we're going to find out.
But so far, all the findings have been here.
Yeah, particularly by the actual what the market is saying.
Well,
forget what judges say and appeal boards say. Look at what the market's saying. The market's saying it's dropped 51%.
All right, and let's consider what that number is. Okay. Now, first off, keep in mind I own a home in the city of Racine. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so. I have a vested interest in making sure that those property values are accurately represented, because it affects my taxes, and I pay a substantial amount of money in taxes. So it's a concern of mine. When I get my assessment each year, I look at that assessment. I usually contact a couple of realtors in the area, and I talk to them about what they think is a reasonable price for my house. If I were to list it and wanted to sell it in a 6-month time period, which I think is a fair amount of time, and they tell me what that number is. These are people that I have respect for, and if that number is within 10% of the number that the city gives me, then I don't challenge.
10% is their leeway. That's right. The legal limit.
That's right, and then I don't challenge them. And so far, my assessments, while I think they are substantial numbers. Okay, they have been within that 10%, and I have not saw fit to challenge the city on those assessments. I certainly encourage anyone who is watching us who feels that their assessment that will be coming out soon is not correct to go out and get another assessment. Or at least get a realtor to come out.
You get an appraisal.
You can usually get realtors to come out and give you, at least it's not an independent appraisal, so to speak, but you can usually get them to come out and give you an idea of what your house is worth.
Well, and it might be worthwhile on some of these assessments to go out and pay the $300-400 it takes to get an appraisal.
And it may be if you think it's
and
wrong.
they will get something that's closer to the fair market
But I
value.
think it's really important when we look at a number and say, gee, the percentage change is 51.5% down, and that the average price of a house is $63,000. There are an awful lot of people in town who have houses that are worth more than $63,000. And that 51.5%, what exactly does it represent? Okay, it represents transactions that occurred in the last year. So if we look at home sales during this time period, in this case it's looking at from 2005 to current, what we're looking at is a lot of foreclosures and a lot of short sales. And in many cases, these are not arm's length transactions. You know, these are transactions where the bank is attempting to liquidate its position. If we look at a number of these, we'll find that the sales occurred within a week of the time the property was listed. So a more fair way to look at this, unfortunately the Journal-Times didn't choose to take that approach, is to look at what are called clean sales. Okay, let's eliminate the foreclosures. Okay, and let's focus on actual arm's length transaction sales that occurred in the city of Racine. That number will dramatically change from 51.5%. When we start looking at people who took care of their houses, whose houses aren't all boarded up, whose houses aren't going through foreclosure or short sales as a result of the economy that we're in. And now we look at a more reasonable number. So,
well,
so I start out with
like
that 51.5 and say that's just not a realistic yardstick for value. So when we look at assessed value of houses, we need to look at the actual housing stock, not simply those that have been eliminated through short sales and less than arm's length transactions.
I understand that all, but listen, there's another side of the story. This is one side, and I agree with you on that. A lot of these are, first of all, they're not the full spectrum of sales. A lot of them are in the older section where the sales are more disastrous, so to speak. But I know of one case that is not in that. It's out in West Racine, and I've heard of others where people simply don't sell their house because they can't get what they want for it. If they were to sell it, if they were to do what you're saying, hey, listen, I've got to sell it. It's time to sell it. Whatever I get, I'm going to get, and you're going to find out it's somewhere closer to that 51% than it is at the 99% that the city assessor is claiming.
Well, actually, the city assessor for last year, assessments in the city declined by about 5.5%.
Well, I'd like to get that notice. Then you can shut me up. But in the meantime, I'm getting 1 or 2% notices. 1 or 2%.
1 or 2% declines. And it looks like it's about a 5.
And there's only been
about
about 2 in the last 5 years. Otherwise, it's holding steady.
Well, I have seen a number in the 2nd district, okay, which I represent, that showed 10% declines.
Well, that's very good.
So, you know,
that's closer to. I think that's closer to reality, particularly in your district.
Yeah, and
of course, your 2nd district. We're in a 2nd district. 2nd district, folks, goes from the Gold Coast all the way to Racine Street. So it's got a whole spectrum of all kinds of homes in there.
So few of our residents believe they live on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, and today that's right. Even porters had to go out of business. But seriously, what's the what area was that? Was that closer to the Gold Coast or closer to
I would say
Census Tracts 1 through 5 reputation?
Well, keep in mind that our district is all in Census Tracts 1 through 5.
That's why I put the word reputation.
And none of us like that term. You know, we're the South Side, we're the historic district.
Yeah.
And you know, certainly we have seen house prices go down.
But where was that one example you had? The 10% drop.
In the historic district.
Oh, okay, that's good. Because those are holding the best. Is the upper level, you know. But still, that's a 10% drop amongst the what I would say the best, the ones that are holding the value the best.
As to your West Racine example, am I suggesting that it's not possible that mistakes have been made or that value differences exist? You know, keep in mind these assessments for the most part are drive-by assessments because that's all we're willing to pay to have done. We have, I think, 3 at most 4 people assessing the entire city each year.
But now we're talking about sales. We're talking about sales, actual sales. The last sale was like when it was sold, when the woman bought it, was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe 15 years ago. And what the assessors do is they walk through and they kind of look at it. That's the way they would get their money. That's how we keep them on the payroll. What they really do is they go back and compare it with sales to see what's happening in that area.
Well, certainly
Which they
sales
could do
is
from their desk, by the way.
But certainly
and wouldn't have to have all of them sitting around
well,
there.
George, sales is certainly
collecting his money.
sales is certainly a good indicator of what the market is willing
That's
to pay
what the
for a
market
house.
says. That's
The
right.
question is, what do you do when it's been 10 years since the last sale? Now, what's the value of that house? That's where we start getting into judgments.
Right.
Okay, so if the house sold for $130,000 10 years ago, what's that house worth today? Well, and that's a factor of a variety of different
follows the
things.
market. You can
Well,
tell from the neighborhood, other sales
sure.
in the area that were only 2 or 3 years
But
ago.
now you have to look at things like, how comparable is this house to that house?
Right.
Is that, what about the condition of the roof? What about the condition of the exterior of the house? So you're looking at a number of different things. We're imputing that the inside of the house probably is being taken care of at the same level as the outside.
mhm.
We don't really know that, okay, but we're
It could be better. It could be there was
could
some
be better,
modeling
could be
inside.
worse. We don't really know.
That's right.
So, assessed value establishment outside of, the longer you get that assessment after a sale, after anything that's externally valid, okay, is something of an art form. And that's why that we give citizens the ability to challenge those every single year. They have a time period where they can come in and challenge the assessment. I take that opportunity each year, and I encourage everyone who's watching to do the same thing.
Eric,
To
I have seen
come
our
up with a
property.
determination of what it's worth.
I've seen our properties go up 20, 30% in 1 year. And that was not based on what was happening at the property, that was based on what was happening in the area of other properties.
And the area
you can use the
counts,
same.
absolutely.
That's right, and comparable. So when we're doing the same, if we're using the same procedure and doing it legitimately, when those prices are dropping 50%, we should be adjusting the assessments.
Well, but keep in mind
equally.
that
But they
those-
don't. It goes up, and there's a political connection to it, and that is the ability of the city to say, guess what? Your tax rate has gone down. Because the higher the assessment, the lower the tax rate. And they've been able to brag about low tax rates for the last 10 years at least. And now that it's time to go down, even though it wouldn't change people's tax liability, they would have to say, hey, guess what? The actual assessment didn't go up, but the tax rate increased by 10%, and they don't want to look at those headlines.
I don't think that we're fooling taxpayers. I believe that taxpayers are smart enough to understand that if they have to write a check for a bigger dollar amount, their taxes went up. Okay, when I was told last year that my taxes went down because the rate went down, okay, and I had to write a check for $600 more than I wrote in the previous year, it doesn't matter to me whether you have dropped the mill rate or increased the assessment or increased the assessable amount, because under state law, the assessment can be based on 110% of assessed value. So you can vary that number too.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to make it look like taxes went down. Okay? At the end of the day, each taxpayer needs to look at their checkbook and ask, did I write a check for more money this year than I did last year? And if the answer to that is yes, then your taxes went up. And simply put, your taxes went up this year, and we made it clear that taxes were going up. I introduced
Hold on
more
a
than
second.
a dozen separate amendments to decrease taxes in this last budget cycle, and they were rejected at the council level. I understand that. Reasonable minds can differ about where the priorities should be. I think the priorities ought to be on transportation, and they weren't there. We made very serious cuts there, and people lose their jobs as a result of that.
I want to get into the next segment.
And on
He's just
reducing
giving
taxes.
a total introduction to our next segment. We need to take a break, and we'll be right back and talk about just the stuff Alderman Marcus was talking about.